You ever had one of those days where you wake up thinking it's just going to be a peaceful morning, only to find yourself staring down 3 armed men at your door? Yeah, neither did I, until I inherited my grandfather's cabin in Maplewood Lake, and the local homeowners association tried to evict me from land I didn't even know I fully owned. But what happened next wasn't just about property lines or legal battles. It was about standing up for what's right, uncovering secrets buried for decades, and watching a community come together after years of fear and silence. If you're watching this from anywhere, leave a comment below with where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story like this again. This is one you won't want to skip. It all started when I pulled into the old gravel road leading to my grandfather's cabin. It had been nearly 20 years since I'd last seen it. After his passing, I felt a pull to return, not just to remember him, but to reconnect with something real, something simple. The drive was long, winding through fields, forests, and lakes that shimmered under the early summer sun. When I finally saw the cabin, nestled among the trees with weathered wood and crooked roofline, a wave of nostalgia hit me like a warm breeze. That first night, I sat on the creaky deck with a cold drink in hand, watching the sunset bleed across the lake. For the first time in months, I felt still, at peace. Then came the pounding on the door. 3 security guards in crisp uniforms shoved an eviction notice into my chest. 48 hours, they said, or we'll be back with more than paperwork. I stood there barefoot, holding a coffee mug, completely stunned. There must be some mistake. I stammered. They shrugged. Take it up with Miss Clark. And just like that, they were gone, leaving me with a thick envelope full of confusing language and threats of fines, lawsuits, and forced removal. My grandfather had owned this place for over 50 years. How could anyone claim otherwise? As I paced the living room, trying to make sense of it all, my neighbor, Mr. Maddox, a man who looked like he'd lived through every storm Maplewood Lake had thrown his way, stopped by. He gave me a grim look as I told him what happened. Doris Clark, he muttered. She's been running this HOA like her personal empire for years now. Your grandpa fought her tooth and nail. She probably never stopped trying to push him out. That night, I pored over the documents they sent. They claimed my cabin encroached on HOA land, that my dock was illegal, and that I was violating safety codes. It sounded like intimidation dressed up in legal jargon. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The next day, while inspecting the dock, I noticed fresh scratches on the posts and signs of recent boat activity. Had someone been using this dock while the cabin was empty? Mr. Maddox confirmed it. Oh, yeah, he said. Doris has been renting spots here to tourists. Charges them $200 a weekend. Made thousands off your dock alone. Anger boiled inside me. Not only were they trying to kick me out, they were profiting from what was mine. That night, I found a dusty folder labeled Original Survey. Keep safe, tucked behind books on the shelf. Inside were yellowed maps, deeds, and a small journal filled with meticulous notes. And then I saw it. The original 1963 survey showed my property extended all the way to the lake, farther than the HOA was claiming. My grandfather had been thorough, maybe because he knew this fight would come. The next morning, I made copies of everything and drove into town. I needed answers. What I found was worse than I imagined. The HOA's current records didn't match the county's. My grandfather had filed a reassessment just months before he died, records that hadn't yet been finalized but clearly supported his original claim. Then came the bombshell. In his journal, I read an entry dated just 5 years ago. New HOA President D. Clark visited today. Offered to buy my lot for development. Price insultingly low. When I declined, she mentioned new community regulations coming. Implied my property might be non-compliant soon. It all clicked. This wasn't about rules. It was about money. Later that day, a woman approached my property line. She introduced herself as Era Finley, a lawyer and my northern neighbor. She shared her own experience with Doris, how she'd been threatened with fines, accused of boundary violations, and intimidated until she pushed back. She targets people who won't fight back, Era said. But you've got proof. We spent the evening going through my grandfather's documents. One map caught her eye. This dock they built, she pointed. It's on your land. And those water rights? If they're using your access without permission, that's not just illegal. It's central to their whole plan. Suddenly, I understood why Doris wanted me gone. Her company had plans for luxury condos, a marina, high-end rentals. But the entire project hinged on controlling the cove, and that cove belonged to me. The next day, Doris arrived with 2 assistants and a camera crew. She snapped photos of my deck, cited a dozen new violations, and installed surveillance camera aimed directly at my front door. When I tried to show her the original surveys, she dismissed them as outdated. You missed the meetings, she said coolly. The community has evolved. That night, I called the county office and requested a copy of the most recent assessment. When it arrived the next morning, I smiled through tears. Grandpa hadn't been paranoid. He'd been preparing. The official letter stated that the Porter property included 70 feet of shoreline and riparian rights to adjacent waters. In other words, I owned the dock. I owned the lakefront. And Doris had been profiting from both. Armed with this, I attended the monthly HOA meeting. Inside, Doris ran the room like a queen bee. Questions were cut short, concerns ignored. When I stood to speak, she tried to shut me down, but I held up the county letter. I have proof that my property extends to the lake, including the area where you've been collecting rental fees. Murmurs spread through the crowd. One board member whispered urgently to Doris. I kept going. I also have documentation of trespassing, vandalism, and harassment. I'm prepared to file charges if necessary. For the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes. The meeting ended abruptly, but outside, neighbors nodded in approval. Some even thanked me. Still, the retaliation came fast. The next morning, my water and electricity were shut off. A notice claimed it was for infrastructure upgrades, but the utility company confirmed the request came from the HOA. So I bought solar panels, a generator, and a water filtration system. If they want to play dirty, I'd be ready. Era helped install the gear and shared another discovery. Doris's development plans include major dredging, she said. It violates environmental laws. But 3 county commissioners are investors in her company. It was corruption, plain and simple. Over the next few weeks, I documented every violation, every trespass, every threat. I installed cameras, filed complaints, built a case piece by piece. Then came the breaking point. I received a call from the sheriff after workers tried to tow my car. I rushed out, blocking the truck. This is private property. I shouted, "You're committing theft." After a tense standoff, they left. Standing there, I remember my grandfather's words. The best way to win a rigged game is to change the rules. And I had just discovered rule number 1. My riparian rights meant the massive HOA dock was technically on my water access. I met with the harbor master, who reluctantly confirmed it. If you own the shoreline, you control the access. I proposed a licensing agreement. Let them keep the dock, but acknowledge my boundaries and pay a fair fee. Doris refused. Instead, she escalated. One night, I returned to find strangers removing my furniture and changing the locks. I called the sheriff. No help came for 18 hours. By morning, my belongings were gone, taken by Doris's company. Defeated, I broke down. I called my mom in tears. Maybe it was time to give up. But then, help arrived. Era took me in. So did Shanley. And others, neighbors who had suffered the same harassment. They shared stories. Families fined for garden plants. Elderly widowers blocked from their driveways. People bullied into selling cheap. And then came the final gift from my grandfather. An old clock. Inside, a hidden camera. He'd been gathering evidence for years. His final message: sometimes you need to see what happens when you're not looking. That night, I reviewed the footage. And there was Doris instructing workers to strip my cabin clean, to take everything important. Smoking gun. With that, I filed for an emergency injunction. Era used her connections to get a hearing in 48 hours. Neighbors came forward with statements. I dug into the HOA's finances, found missing funds, false reports, secret transfers. Doris's company was drowning in debt. Her development was a Ponzi scheme. We were winning. At the hearing, the judge watched the video. He issued a restraining order, ordered immediate access to my home. The sheriff escorted me back. And the next morning, I floated the dock. Just like that. Word spread. Support grew. Board members began questioning Doris's decisions. Even the sheriff started returning my calls. Then came the final blow. During an emergency meeting Doris tried to cancel, I walked in with a projector and a thick folder. Projected on the wall, financial fraud, falsified minutes, secret recordings, including one where Doris admitted to fabricating violations. "I don't care what violations you create," she said. "Just get them out." Another recording showed her telling workers to remove my stuff illegally. Then came the moment that sealed her fate. "They can't afford to live in a premium community," she spat, furious. "That's the plan all along." The room fell silent, then erupted. The board voted unanimously to remove her. The HOA collapsed. County prosecutors opened investigations. Doris fled. And slowly, the community healed. We created a legal fund to protect homeowners. We restored transparency. We rebuilt trust. Standing on my dock 1 year later, watching kids run along the shore, I raised a glass to my grandfather, because this fight wasn't just about property. It was about standing up, about truth, about legacy, and maybe, just maybe, about doing what's right. Even when everyone else is afraid to. Moral lesson: stand firm in what's yours, but fight not just for yourself, for people around you too. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from taking, but from protecting what matters most.